Hello humans, welcome to The Front Line, a leadership and business podcast brought to you by Peregrine Corporate Services, an Isle of Man-based fiduciary provider. My name is Martin Hall. Thanks for listening. Today I'm joined by Andy Wood, founder and director of ETC Tax. Thanks for joining me today, Andy.
Hi Martin, no problem.
So as I normally start with guests, just to get a bit of background to themselves. Where did you grow up? Your early days, schooling, that type of thing?
Yeah, so I'm originally from Yorkshire, a place near a place called Castleford, which is near Leeds. And generally speaking, when I was growing up, people only knew where it was if they followed rugby league. It's a rugby league town. More recently, because about 10, 15 years ago, they built a big indoor ski centre there. So perhaps at the other sort of end of the demographic scale, skiers also know where Castleford is as well. So there's probably a large bit in the middle. But yeah, I grew up there, and basically left when I went to university when I was 18, and haven't been back a great deal since then. It has to be said, because my family have pretty much all moved away from there now.
All right, okay. And when you went to uni, where did you go to uni? What were you studying?
I went to York, so it wasn't a huge. it wasn't in terms of geographically, it wasn't a long way at all. But it was very different. A very different life being at university in York, and sort of the people that you mixed with. So it may as well have been on the other side of the planet. It meant I could, I could sort of
back with your washing.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And what were you studying there?
So I studied English, which in terms of the career path I've gone down might sound strange, but no, I in the absence of having any idea of what I might want to do in life, I decided I'd do something which I enjoyed, which was English. But I think by the time I'd finished my degree, I didn't want to read a book sometimes.
Yeah, funny enough, I was chatting to someone yesterday, and it was that exact same conversation about going to uni and perhaps still at that age not knowing exactly where the career path lies. So they pick something that I guess suits their needs at that time, but that changes over time.
Yeah, I mean, sorry to interrupt, but I genuinely didn't really have any career aspirations, which sounds a bit unimaginative. I know. I think when I was much younger, I wanted to be a cartoonist and an illustrator and then a journalist, and then I probably found out how much those people tended to get paid. So probably started again. But I remember feeling that I had to go on a mission to the university sort of career centre in my last week at uni, and sitting there and reading through all the the brochures that the milk around and things had produced. So I really didn't have any idea at all.
No, I tell a story to friends that early on I wanted to be a fighter jet pilot. So yeah, career advisor at 14. Probably just rolled his eyes and walked out of the room. He was probably right to as well. So then you transitioned into work. Where did you first start working? And
yeah, so I first started at I did a couple of sort of very temp jobs when I needed to get a bit of money after I graduated. I was very fortunate actually. After I graduated, I went on a cricket tour to Barbados with the cricket team. I came back with a nice suntan, but with absolutely nothing left in my pocket. So I think I went to Reed Recruitment and said, "Yeah, you need to find me a job. I need some money." So I did a few temp jobs, but I suppose my first sort of stop on the career ladder was with Arthur Andersen, God rest its soul. So that would have been back in 1999, 2000, give or take. And then I moved on to Ernst & Young in London, where I spent a few sort of happy years, really. But both of those were sort of tax roles, private client tax roles.
Yeah. So that first step then into the tax space, was that sort of conscious decision, or was that more I just need a job, or a bit of both?
Well, I'm yet to meet a tax person who had any design of going into tax. I think it's just where people wash up, and some people like it and some people have an aptitude, but I don't think anybody has that burning ambition. My oldest brother, he's a barrister actually. He's one of these really weird people who I think at the age of 11 or 12 had decided he wanted to become a barrister. I think he'd been watching Rumpole of the Bailey or something like that. But he stuck to that all the way through. There was no deviation from his career plan. But I think I mean I enjoy tax and enjoy the people that I met. But I think it's probably it certainly is luck rather than any kind of plan that I put into action.
And those early years with Arthur Andersen, etc., do you remember any mentors at that kind of time that helped you kind of carve your career?
I wouldn't say that. Certainly no formal mentors, but certainly there were some people who showed an interest. And again, I don't want to disparage big firms, but sometimes it can be very easy to go about your business with people taking very little interest in you whatsoever. So I always remember the people who showed an interest and sat down and helped. And there was a chap called Mark at Ernst & Young in London, and I think he's certainly from Yorkshire. I seem to remember he was from Hull, but he kind of took me under his wing and took me along to client meetings and really sort of fed my sort of inquisitiveness and eagerness, believe it or not. I once was eager, eagerness to learn, and I think it's people like that you remember. I wouldn't necessarily say I have thought of them as a formal mentor, but I suppose that perhaps does fit the definition.
Yeah, okay. And then you mentioned that. I mean, I know you then moved on to some of the big four firms. How did you find working for those in that scenario?
Again, I mean, if you look at my CV, I spent pretty much all of my career in gainful employment. Anyway, with big firms, but I never really felt particularly at home in big firms. I think the more you went up the food chain, I mean, because I was primarily interested in the work and the clients. And trying to find the work, but the more and more you moved up the food chain, the more it became about managing your own career. A dreadful expression. And you spent more and more time dealing with that than actually dealing with the work itself, which I always found frustrating.
Right. I suppose that transitions nicely into kind of the present day and your own business. So where did that original idea come from? Was that sort of brewing inside of these bigger firms aren't quite my fit, I need to look elsewhere?
Well, I mean, I left to set up my own business from Grant Thornton. I must say I really enjoyed working at Grant Thornton. Probably on there about 3 years. Worked with some really good people. And you talk about mentors before, but there's a great guy there called John Lobel who you may well have come across in your sort of day job. But it was just a great guy, and the best tax person that I ever worked with. And I'm quite happy to sing his praise now because he retired last year. So the competition it isn't there. But GT was a really good firm, and really. Really well set up to deal with the type of clients that I like dealing with, which was active entrepreneurial folk, which, despite perhaps a little bit of lip service, I don't think the bigger firms that I'd worked at previously really were kind of set up to deal with those. I think working in those private client teams for those firms, you're a bit of you're a bit of an ugly sister really, and kind of there. If one of the big corporate clients, somebody wanted a bit of personal advice, so that's my view. But I enjoy my time at Grant Thornton. But I think I'd done my course really working for large firms, and just one day to say, you know what, I'm going to try my own thing. Worst case scenario is I have to come back and get a job again somewhere, which people say to me, "Oh God, you're so." It was quite a brave decision to do it, but really that was the thought process I went through, which I think actually on reflection is quite a negative, quite a negative way of setting up a business when you've got facts what the worst case scenario is, rather than thinking, you know what, there's money in them hills. And I've had sort of business contacts who have come to me and said, you know, we're setting up we're setting up our own business. We're going to take some members of staff with us. We're going to borrow a few £100,000 from the bank. Have you got any advice? And I've said in the past that you're asking the wrong person. I didn't do any of those. I literally went and camped in my spare bedroom for 6 months, and literally that was it. So I always knew that I didn't have the costs. I could go back, and it doesn't sound like particularly heroic, but that's the truth, really. In terms of what I could deliver for clients, I was always certain that I could offer a level of service which people would expect in a bigger firm, and I could do it at a lower cost. And I was fortunate enough that my boss had said, anybody wants to work with Andy Wood, then they can do it, as long as I wasn't taking the Mickey and sort of trying to scalp a few clients. So I had a few came with me, and that's where it started, really.
And those early days in the spare rooms, did you have doubts about it at all, or was it just head down? And
not really. And in many ways, it's in some ways it's gone. Other than I've got a lot of people in the house with me at the moment now, and then I was by myself as everybody else was out of the house. We're kind of in the same position where we are working from home and not not venturing out. Whereas back when I set up, well, just over 9 years ago, you're right. I was sat in my spare bedroom listening to the radio, and that's all I had for company. And I think it was when I started talking to the radio that I decided I had to get some office space and some people around me.
So transition into that first, because inevitably to ramp the business up, you then need to employing people, which just brings a whole new dynamic to, I'm sure you're very customer focused, and suddenly if there's other things to deal with, from recruitment to staff. How did you find that transition?
I think that's when it gets difficult. It gets difficult because you really have to start properly managing your finances. You're inevitably clearly going to see your sort of profit margin dip as soon as you take somebody on, and clearly if you take somebody on, you're hopefully that you're not going to be working in a spare bedroom, because that's going to probably land you in all kinds of problems. So you're very quickly going from what is quite a lean machine with low outgoings to something where you've got those fixed costs, which are should focus the mind. Once you start taking on, I suppose, the more senior people, which probably was something we first did, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago. So you're looking at people who are out there with their own contacts and winning work and doing work, so that you no longer have perhaps full sight over work in progress and the pipeline and what's been built. Then running a business, I think, then does become an exercise in itself. And I'll be completely honest, the running of the business and the managing of staff never been something, I'm sure it won't come as a surprise to my staff, has never been something which is particularly been my cup of tea. And I'm very fortunate that and perhaps this might surprise a few people that my wife works in the business, and she pretty much takes care of the running and managing of the business, which really frees me up to do the client
do what
work,
you're good at,
meet clients, and think about building the business, because it can be very difficult about thinking about building the business when you get sucked into all these other issues.
And those during those different transitions from ramping the business up, did you always have did you always sit and put sort of strategic business plans together? Or were you comfortable enough with kind of general of here's where the income's coming, here's where the clients are, to not go into, to maybe get bogged down in numbers and more go with maybe a gut instinct at times?
Yeah, I think I've always gone for gut instinct, and again, I think it's where the partnership of myself and Angela does work, and I'm good instinct. Yeah, I'll try anything once in terms of what we do as a business. She's very much my sit down plan. We'll have a business plan, and I think we both clearly understand that you put something down at the beginning of your business plan, you can pretty much guarantee that 6 months into that plan, the reality is completely different. But
Yeah.
I do think it's a good exercise to sit down and think about the business, and putting together a business plan it allows you to do that. So it's not really the outcome that I think is important. It's more the fact that you've taken the time to think about it. And we've had a couple of, I suppose I'd describe themselves as business coaches over the years, and this might not be the particular the testimonial they were looking for, but they've been good exercises. But I think that's purely been because it has meant if they've come in every week or every 2 weeks, it's meant we've had time thinking and talking about the business. It really could have been hosted by a crash test dummy. It would have we would still have gone through the same thought process, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Otherwise you can go weeks and months without really thinking about where you go as a business.
Absolutely. The networking side of things, obviously, again, starting from scratch and building that network and where you are now, sort of tips for people if they're listening to, that you use for networking. Is it for you? Is it just connect with people, meet people, chat with people type philosophy? Build a relationship that way.
I think it is, and may come as a great surprise, but I'm certainly no Jordan Belfort, and I'm not particularly the most, as we were saying just before we started, I'm not necessarily the most sociable person in the world, but I think in our industry, and I'm talking about tax, but probably applies to anybody in sort of accounting and professional services. I think it's a very small percentage of people who are incredibly extrovert and out there and really in their element when they're sort of out networking. Most people that I've come across in professional services just do not do anything whatsoever. Same in the Big Four. Most people are happy sat behind their computer, and I don't criticize that at all, but it does mean there's a real opportunity for people in our industry who may not necessarily, it might not come easy, they may not feel that they're the best, they may not quite know what they're doing, but the fact that they get out there and do something regularly will set them apart from everybody else. Now, I've said that to some of our junior members of staff. For them, they can be you can be very good technically as a tax advisor or in professional services. But if you're looking in the future, I'm not encouraging the people I say is to look for other jobs, but if you are looking for another job, there are always going to be lots of tax advisors out there. But if you can bring that network, bring that sort of following, because you've worked on that over the years, and career-wise, that's got to be a good thing. And I do quite a bit of stuff on LinkedIn, but for me, first and foremost, it's still the traditional face-to-face networking, which should be the real core of your network. The LinkedIn stuff is just the periphery, the stuff around the edges, as far as that. Certainly in our industry, that's my view.
Yeah, okay. And just to give the listeners a view, I suppose it's not an ideal client, but typically you've obviously got a number of people working now. When you're looking at tax, what areas do you guys cover? So it's a question of what you don't cover.
Well, I mean, it is really. We're a team now of, I think, about 14 or 15, and we've got two senior technical. Touchwood, we've got two new senior hires coming in this month, which we're quite excited about. But between us, we cover we cover most areas of tax, so from VAT to IHT. We do investigations. We do planning for non-doms, people becoming non-resident, SMEs, setting up overseas, transactional work, and things like R&D. But our clients tend to come down one of two shoots. Firstly, we will deal with a lot of professional clients, because accountants these days may not be completely up to speed with tax changes. Clearly, we've got an incredibly flabby tax code, increasingly complex, and most accountants don't really want to dabble in that. So we get a lot of work from accountants dealing with their clients. So they tend to be high net worth and SMEs, and then we get direct clients as well. So I suppose direct punters such as high net worth individuals and businesses, SMEs themselves.
Okay, interesting. And then I was going to ask, and the answer is not allowed to be tax books, but if you'd have any recommendation for people to read any books, have you got any recommendations, or where you kind of take it, maybe inspiration from, or motivation, or anything of that nature, so outside of the tax Tolly books?
I don't take my yellow Tully's book to bed, not anymore anyway. But I do read quite a lot, and I'm ashamed to say, for somebody who did English at university, I don't read a lot of fiction anymore. I tend really just to read non-fiction, because I find it easier to pick up and put down. Okay. But I've read some interesting books over probably over the last few months. There's a book called Bad Blood, which I read, which was about the Silicon Valley scandal. I think it's Theranos, the company, who was saying, to be fair, it's a good lesson in why the slogan always work. But that's I think it's by John Carreyrou. Really good book. I'd recommend to somebody who wants to a business book. I've just read another biography of Churchill. I think that one was Andrew Roberts. Andrew Roberts. Again, always a good read. Anything on Churchill. And I read, this is going back to The Holiday, which that had sort of the end of the summer. There's a book called by a cricketer, big cricket fan, called by Graham Fowler. And that is called, what was that? Yeah, it's called Absolutely Fox. I think his nickname was Foxy. But that's interesting because it talks quite a lot about his battles with mental health, and a really good read. So I recommend that to anybody who, not necessarily a big cricket fan, but maybe a bit of a sports fan who wants a very honest account of some struggles that they've had. So that I'd really recommend that one.
I'll add them to the footnotes, so if anybody wants to find them, they're on there. So we're in an odd time at the moment with Corona plans, but I suppose looking at plans generally, just continue over the next year or so, just continue to grow, develop, and try and work through this transition period, I guess you might call it.
I think so. It's an odd position to be in, because really, the real difference is staff are sort of dispersed to all areas of the four corners of the Northwest, and that's clearly a big difference. And managing that brings up its own challenges. But we've tended to have a morning call every morning, whether it lasts 2 minutes or whether it lasts 40 minutes. Entirely just depends on the day. And in some respects, probably some people get more exposure than they would in the office, because clearly people aren't out at meetings or in London or overseas or anything like that. So that's been okay. Other than that, in terms of finances, so other than that, we've had a couple of clients, really sadly, we had a couple of clients who have died, which is really awful. One of those cases, yeah, the writing was on the wall, and yeah, the family wanted to make sure that this person and the individual themselves, that they got their IHT planning in place. So it's fairly grim, where you're kind of rushing around for 2 days, trying to get documents signed before the inevitable happens. Not brilliant, but on the more positive, we haven't had any clients, touch wood, who have suffered real sort of terminal financial effects of coronavirus. And in terms of our own business, if you will, as I do now and again, go on Zero and have a look at our figures, and see what's going on, there's been no change at all. In the last couple of months have been probably our strongest in the last couple of years. So it's very easy. It's very easy to go in your shell, and who knows? Maybe that's the right decision. But I've taken a view, and with Angela, that actually, let's keep going. Let's keep trying to grow the business. And as I said before, we've got a couple of people starting. There's no intention to furlough or get rid of any staff at the moment. Early days, who knows? 6-8 weeks time, I might be eating my words, but at the moment, it's kind of over the top plan, really. Yeah.
yeah. No, stay positive, absolutely. And people want to reach out to you. How's the best way to reach out to you, Andy?
Yeah, I mean, I'm there on LinkedIn if anybody wants to find me, or alternatively, I'm quite happy if somebody wants to send me an email. I'm sure you can probably put my email somewhere on this. But yeah, I'm quite happy if anybody wants to drop me a line, say hello, whatever, that'd be great.
Okay, great. I appreciate your time today. It's been very informative.
It's been enjoyable. Thanks, Martin.
Yeah, thank you.
Cool. Bye.